The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Important DAT-MAIL DIME Interface Changes. We still have some folks that are getting logged into the webinar, so we're going to give them just another minute to finish up that login process, and then we'll get started. We appreciate your patience, and we'll be back in just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Important Changes Coming Up for DAT-MAIL DIME Interface. My name is Monica Lundquist. I'm the Marketing and Training Specialist here at WindowBook, and also with us today is Lloyd Moss, who is our VP of Product Management and Strategy. A few housekeeping items before we get started. When you log into the webinar, you are automatically placed into a mute mode, which is just to help keep any background noise to a minimum. And we will be taking questions towards the end of the webinar. There's a couple ways that you have to submit a question. One is to click on the raise hand icon, which is located on the GoToWebinar on your screen, or GoToWebinar console, I should say, on your screen. And that'll be our cue that you've got a question, and then we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question during the Q&A session. The other way for you to submit a question is to type your question into the questions area, which is also located on the GoToWebinar console, and then click on the send button, and then we'll read and respond to your question during the Q&A session. If you're using your computer speakers to access the audio for the webinar today, you may wish to close out of any unnecessary applications running on your computer, and that will help to optimize your audio quality. And last housekeeping note, we are recording this webinar as we do all of our webinars. Because this is a client-only webinar, we will not be posting this recording to our website. However, we will make it accessible to everyone who has registered for the webinar today. All right, that takes care of our housekeeping items, so let's go ahead and get started. So today what we're going to be talking about is to review some of the critical upcoming changes in DAT-MAIL's DIME interface. We'll talk about the transition from DIME to a multi-carrier trailer manifesting system. We'll turn it over to Lloyd and he'll walk us through these changes. And then we'll cover a future roadmap for the DIME interface. And we'll also have the opportunity for a Q&A session. So one of the first things we want to tell you about is that LSC is changing their DIME server URL. So this is very important for you to be able to keep using your DIME interface. And we'll give you that information in just a moment. And once those URLs have been changed, you will need to install the April update. And we'll be getting more information from Lloyd about that in a few minutes. Then, once you install the April update of DAT-MAIL with DIME, you will then update those URLs in the DIME settings. And it's important to note that there's a new menu structure which has moved those particular settings. Did I miss anything there, Lloyd? I guess not. Okay, so these are the new URLs from LSC, and again, these are not, you don't want to activate these yet. You will want to wait until you've implemented the April release, and you don't need to write these down because we will be providing this information to you in some additional communication. But there's a new production environment URL, and there's also a new test environment URL. And again, we will be sending this information to you separately, and you will also have this webinar video to go back to refer to.
One thing I want to point out is that release is due out next Thursday, the 25th. And the last day that the current server will continue working is the next day, the 26th. I'm trying to get LSC to extend that a little bit so that you have more time to do the update, but So far, I don't have confirmation that they will extend that. So you will need to act very quickly when this new release comes out. And these URLs will not work in our current release. They've changed the versioning of DIME. You can see in the test environment, they have the old versioning 2.2.4, and the new one is 2.2.4.1, and that broke our old release. So the new one will be a lot more flexible, but that's why you're going to need it. Go ahead, Monica.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. All right, so some things you need to be cognizant of is install the update, and as Lloyd mentioned, you won't have a whole lot of time to do that, unfortunately. Then you will want to go to the logistics menu within DAT-MAIL and select WB Scan Maintenance. Then you'll want to select Settings, and then that is where you will copy and paste the new URLs and save, or click OK. And again, this information will be provided to you separately in some separate instructions, and you'll also have this video to relay back to, but this is kind of the sequence of events that will need to take place. And again, this is important because these settings are in a little bit different location. Anything new there, Lloyd?
Yeah, when we get to the demo, I'll take you through the new menus. It's simpler, and it's going to make it easier to use all the new features. So, but it is different. I think if you didn't have a heads up on this, you'd be kind of scratching your head, where did I put everything, you know? So just stand by, you'll get a chance to see it.
Okay, thanks. All right, so some more information we want to share from you is the transition from DIME to what we're calling our multi-carrier trailer manifesting. And basically what this means is that the new DIME interface will not only work with LSC, but you'll be able to use this interface to plan all of your trailers, regardless of what logistics providers that you use. So WB Scan can verify them or build manifests on the fly. And again, it will work with any logistics provider. And this will allow you to create consolidation, LTL, origin, or direct trailers. And you'll also be able to print bills of lading and export these manifests to CSV files. Now, the DIME API is used for the LSC trailers, and interfaces for other carriers will be to come. Anything additional there, Lloyd, that you won't, or will this just be something you'll be showing us?
Well, the roadmap is the next carrier on deck is ALG, and we have a couple of others we're talking to for after that. But if you have a specific carrier, let's say a regional one that you work with, and you know that they have some technology out there that might be something we could tie into, just let us know, and we can pursue that. But even without any interface, you'll find that there's a terrific return on investment for planning your manifests, planning your trailers with this product. And we'll get into that during the demo.
Okay. So in order to use the multi-carrier trailer manifesting with LSC, you must create a carrier record and select it as the carrier for LSC Dropship Copal. You must also select the parsed historical header job ID. And again, Lloyd will be showing this information to us. OnePrice is a new LSC program that splits your jobs 3 ways: dropship, copal, and commingle. If you participate, you can use a different carrier code. The workflow for this is very different. Now, to accommodate this, we have made major changes in the menus. The DIME menu has been eliminated. So instead, you will need to select you can select multi-carrier trailer manifesting under the logistics menu instead. There's a new navigator style menu that will appear, and its contents will include only the options that are based on your settings. For example, if you don't have a carrier selected for LSC, none of the LSC related options will appear. If you are still using the single job DIME user interface, you can find it under DIME Legacy. You should look at transitioning to the newer UI that's found in Assign Palettes to Manifests, since we may sunset the legacy user interface in July. The newer user interface is faster, easier, and is compatible with WB-Scan. Anything to add there, Lloyd?
Yeah, when we get into some of the differences, the new user interface, even if you only do DIME LSC planning, it can be a lot faster, and the dismiss release part of it is certainly a lot more streamlined for your mail clerk or for yourself if you're on Seamless. So there's a lot of advantages to it. And of course, you also in the same user interface can create trailers for other carriers. So again, another big advantage. But there are some issues with the old DIME user interface. For example, sometimes we get error messages back from LSC that would indicate something has failed, and it did not fail. And we have no way of knowing whether they're really truly failures or whether we're just getting some bad result data back from LSC. And the newer user interface makes it easier to see when that type of thing happens. It gives you a lot more control over what you're sending to LSC. But we're just the workflows are actually fairly similar. The big difference between the two are that the legacy is one job at a time. You select the job and then go through the steps. Mm-hmm. And then you have to select another job and go through all the steps. And if you have multiple mail.dat files that you are trying to load onto a single trailer, you got to repeat everything, as many times as you have mail.dat files. And with the new user interface, you don't have to do that. You can actually handle all of them at once. So if you had 10 mail.dat files with 10 versions and you wanted to load them onto the same trailer, very easy to do with the new user interface, and very tedious and time consuming to do with the old one. But the steps are basically the same. So it really won't be hard for you folks to get used to the new one.
All right, sounds like a great improvement. Okay, so then the next step would be to add your carriers. So at this time, you don't have to enter the data exchange information. As we add interfaces for other carriers, you can come back and add the information that's necessary. Then you'll want to add your distribution centers, and since these are not specifically linked to a carrier, if you have multiple carriers in the same city, such as Bolingbrook, Illinois, but the carrier name or abbreviation, you want to put the carrier name or the abbreviation in the facility name to avoid confusion. This information will print on the bill of lading. You will also need to add a distribution center for each origin that you may create an origin trailer for, and a generic LTL record that you will select when assigning consolidation centers to pallets that you will ship on LTL trailers.
Yeah, this record here is actually an example of a LSC distribution center, and of course it was R. Donley, and the DC meant Donley Consolidation Center. So it was, you only would see that if it was a Donley facility. But there are at least 4 different logistics companies with consolidation centers in Bolingbrook now.
Right.
So I would put in, some indication of which one is which.
Some indicator that'll help you, and would also then print out on your manifests and so forth.
Right.
All right. Well, with that, we've explained a little bit about the need for some of the upcoming changes to DAT-Mail with the change of the LSC URLs, and of course all the new improvements that we're making to the DAT-MAIL DIME interface. So I'm going to turn it over to Lloyd now, and he's going to give us a more detailed look at the changes. Lloyd is our VP of Product Management Strategy, has decades of experience in the mailing industry, and Lloyd is responsible for managing our existing products and also for introducing new products and functionality. So there's nobody better to introduce all these changes than Lloyd. So Lloyd, I will go ahead and switch it over to you so you can show us how all this is going to work.
Thanks, Monica. Okay, so this is a recent test build of DAT-MAIL, and what I want to show you is that off the file menu, you have the carrier list where you set up the carriers you're working with. You will need to set up a carrier for LSC or, for your DIME transactions. And, this is something you will need to absolutely do once you install the new release. Even if you're already using the new user interface. I know we've had several customers switch over to it already, and but to keep it going, you're going to have a carrier record associated to LSC. And then the other thing that we have had for many years actually is a distribution center list, and now we're using it for the different consolidation centers. And you don't really have to fill much of this out. Actually, the distribution center address does print on the bill of lading, so you really should fill that one out if you plan to print bills of lading. And but these have a specific role in the in our process. And speaking of that, there you should also, this might sound a little silly, but you want to just create a distribution center record that simply says LTL, and it's really it's a placeholder, and you'll see what this is all about in a minute. The new system can create trailers specifically for consolidation centers, for direct trailers going to one or more stops. And it can also create trailers for LTL, and it can also create trailers for origin pallets that are being transported to an origin location. And you put origins in here as well, by the way. So if you send mail to 2 different origin post offices, you'd want to put both of them on this list. So it's a pretty generic, list of destinations where your pallets might be shipped to. So this new menu system I was telling you about, you notice that there's no DIME menu on the top menu anymore. It's just logistics. And if we go to multi-carrier trailer manifesting, it actually creates this miniature navigator-like menu. Everything is actually in the order in which you would use it for the new DIME user interface, or the new multi-carrier user interface, I should say. The process is associating content to your LSC jobs. And, this feature has actually been in the product for about 6 or 7 months, where we could go ahead and provide the same content for a number of different jobs. And say, I'm just going to click on this, and it will come up with the DIME content. And if you recall, you've started to see this quite a while ago, where you can set the various reference fields to variables that are in your mail.dat. And this is going to associate that content to the job. So that's always step one. And again, if you have like 10 jobs that are 10 mail.dats for the same job, you can tag the 10 of them and then associate the content once and apply it to all 10 jobs. Again, this is really something very handy if you have multiple mail.dat files that represent different versions of the same job. The next step is to go to our pallet list. And this is a really neat feature. I think most of you have seen it, but it's actually showing you all the pallets from all your jobs. And we can drill down and query them. And if we click on the filter button, we have a number of filter criteria. We're about to add some new ones. But we can also hide the pallets that have already been put on a manifest or put on a trailer and associated with a manifest. So this way you only have to see the new ones. You can select a range of payment dates. So if you want to see stuff that's, let's say, shipping tomorrow, or supposed to be shipped tomorrow, and you only want to see things that haven't been put on a trailer yet, you can, put in a range of dates and see only those things. But you can also look at a job, and again, right now we're using the DIME convention of taking the original job ID, which we store as the historical header job ID, and cutting it into two sections. The first section of 5 digits is the job ID, and the second section of 3 characters is the list ID. And if I were to click on this, I would be able to select the job. And one of the other things you can do here is if I want to look at the list ID, you can click on this and you can check off. If you have, let's say, 30 versions, you want to look at 4 of them, you can check off the 4 you want to see, and those would be included. So this is one of the first places that we have used this kind of multi-select in a filter. But there are a lot of other things that we'll be able to do to whittle down this list to just things that we want. So again, the big difference here is that if you had 4 list IDs, we can now operate on those 4 at the same time and only see those 4. And you can see that I've already been, assigning some of these things. There's really a couple of steps here. Step 1 is to assign a consolidation facility. When we say that, it goes beyond that now. We're going to actually assign, I got to tag some pallets here. Okay, so I just tagged a few pallets. I can assign the consolidation facility ID, but first I have to select the carrier. Now, before the public release, I am going to try to make this sticky so that you don't have to keep on. If you're only doing LSC, for example, you won't have to change this. But, again, if you're going to do, 10 manifests or 10 sets of palette selections, you're not going to have to populate that each time. So that's something that I'm hoping will be out in the public release next week. So at this point, it's selected that now. By the way, if I had said that I'm going to select LSC, watch what happens. I'm going to take these 3 pallets and give those to LSC. Not that you would ever split a job like that. And I really don't, I'll leave those other ones ALG. Okay, so if I do this time, I'm going to say LSC now. And then the facility list I get is their list. This is coming from DIME. And I always like Bolingbrook. And so you can see I have ALG in Bolingbrook, and I have the LSC in Bolingbrook, which just says Bolingbrook here. All right. So the next step in all this is I want to select a manifest, or which again you may recognize this. It's very similar to what you've been used to using, but this is where it gets interesting. I'm going to create a manifest, and that's the same thing as requesting a truck in the world of LSC and DIME. Now, if I were to say that this is LSC, it's telling me an LSC trailer will be requested. So it's going to have the same behavior as your current DIME user interface in terms of requesting a trailer using a DIME message. And then, of course, when we get to the list of entry points, it's going to also show me that that same list. Now you'll notice that we have other settings here. Today for LSC, we're only supporting consolidation trailers. The DIME user interface can also support a single destination, single stop direct trailer. In order for us to do that, we have to be pulling their list of facilities. We can't use the USPS list And we'll be doing that sometime over the next 2 or 3 months. So for those of you who have had to kind of work around limitations to your current DIME in terms of direct trailers, you'll actually be able to do them the right way for LSC sometime this summer. However, there is a limitation in DIME currently where we can't do multi-stop trailers. But, if you were doing a multi-stop trailer with any other logistics company, we can switch this to direct, and then we can start defining stops. All right, so let's say I want to go to NBC Springfield, and then maybe go to Central Massachusetts SCF, and I can do that as well. Let's see, there we go. So now I have a 2-stop trailer. Now, in the stop number 1 is usually the pallets you put at the end or tail of the trailer, and stop number 2 is what you put in the nose or the front of the trailer. But let's say you decided, well, I'm not going to go do it in that order. I'm going to do it in a different order. I can change the order of the stops using these up and down arrow keys. And I can also put in a maximum weight for the trailer, and if I try to load too many pallets, it'll give me a warning. I can also put in a maximum pallet position count, or actually a pallet count in this case. And again, if we select too many pallets, it's going to go over. So that would be how you create a direct trailer. Now, what would happen is if I were to select that, I suspect at this point all of my pallets would disappear because I don't think I have anything going out on the 17th, but let's see what happens. Yeah. What would happen if I hadn't made that mistake is I would have been able to see only pallets that are going out on the 17th that are going to those 2 entry points. For example, if you had, let's say, an SCF Boston pallet, I couldn't have loaded it onto that trailer because that was not one of the stops. So if I were to go back actually, and why don't I show you another feature that is really, really cool. It's been in and out of the program for a little bit. This is we had it in there as the DIME order button, and this is how DIME orders are placed. So now we're making that button serve 2 different functions. What you can do with it is you can actually go in and change mailing dates. Like this is an old file that I have nothing but garbage in this system. So right now the postage date is May 25th of last year, but I've selected these 3 pallets, and I'm going to go to dates and orders, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to, let's say, do it today, and might as well ship it the same day as I'm paying the postage. And I can change in homes whatever I want and click OK. Now I haven't assigned those pallets to a consolidation center. Watch what happens. It says, do I want to assign one now? I can say yes, and I can say, all right, this will be ALG, and or actually no, I used any logistics, didn't I, on that last test? And let's see, it's going to be, I'm just going to use this one. Right now, as I mentioned, we don't have a tight tie-in between those distribution centers and carriers. But so now I actually have associated those pallets and changed the dates. See that? All right. And by the way, that's updating the underlying mail.dats as well. So if you were to go and send a ready-to-pay update on this file to pay postage, it would have today's date as the postage date. This is all, interlocked. It's still not going to show up if I were to add it to the trailer because these happen to be in Michigan. Nice idea, but I just wanted to demonstrate this. So for those of you now, if this had been an LSC trailer, then if I wanted to send these to, if I just wanted to send these orders, I can click these three. These are LSCs. And I don't have to change any dates. And now it's sending the orders. Pre-processed, no errors. All right, by the way, further down on the right side, we do have the carrier listed someplace. I think it must have, yeah, right here. All right, so you can, in a week, you can see what carriers are actually assigned. So again, let's get back to putting one of these on a pallet. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to put these three Bolingbrook onto a, see what my mailing date is. Oh, those are still 5/25, right? So let's go find a, actually it's probably not going to let me do a 5/25 unless I have one already. I do have one. Nope. Yeah, I should have changed those dates because I don't. If I were to create a manifest for 5/25 for LSC, I think it's going to probably complain. You know what I should do is maybe change those dates instead, and that way I can create a nice new trailer. But the whole point I'm about to get to is that the process is really no different than it used to be. Instead of it saying add to EBOL, it just says BOL. Because EBOL is more of an LSC term, BOL is more of an industry term. You know, we're just adding it to the bill of lading. All right, so I'm just going to actually close this. I'm going to go over here, and I'm now going to change the date. Yeah, let's make it today. No time like the present. So it's actually refreshed the order. And now it knows that it's 4/17. Now I'll go select the manifest. And if I have to create a manifest, it's just like it used to be. Just hit create manifest. I'm going to select LSC. And I'm going to select Bolingbrook. And I'm done. I'm now requesting the trailer. So in probably about 10 minutes, there'll be a trailer sitting right in front of here, and I'm not sure what I'll put in it. Come on, you can do it. Give me a second. Never fails to fail, right during a demo. Yeah, normally we would have a response by now.
Yep, this always happens during a webinar. And I will say too, if you have
there it goes.
GoToWebinar running, it sometimes makes it even worse.
Yeah, well, what happens, okay, so it did respond. We have a nice big manifest ID. You'll notice that for multi-carrier, you're going to have a low number. This number is actually assigned by DIME, all right? And actually, this gets assigned by DIME as well. So now I'm going to select it. And what it's showing me are eligible pallets that could go on there. So in other words, you don't have to go fishing for which pallets could go on this trailer. All right. It might be all of them. All right. Or it could be some of them. You know, that's going to be up to you. And then at this point, you'll notice all I have to do here is press bill of lading, which we'll do in a second. But I wanted to show you, if you look at the title bar, it's showing you the information about the selected manifest. So you always see that at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and create the bill of lading. or the electronic bill of lading in the case of LSC. So then this should all look very familiar to all of you. We just linked those 6 pallets to that trailer. And the main thing to remember is that you don't ever have to really leave the screen to go to other options. You can get to the manifest, look up here, and by the way, you can, get your pallet list, right from here. You can dispatch it from here. You now have an export, which will export this into a nice spreadsheet in CSV format. You can print bills of lading if you want to do that. And all of this now will work whether you are interfacing to another carrier or just using your own data with another carrier. This export is something that your other carriers might be interested in seeing. It basically describes the contents of the trailer. And we have some really interesting things planned. One of the buttons that we'll probably have in either May or June is something you can press a button, and what it will do is it'll look ahead 2 or 3 days, or 1 to 3 days. This will be a setting. It'll look at manifests that you've created already but are not representing full trucks. And it will then look for any pallets that you have added, and it would actually allow you to automatically associate those pallets to those existing manifests without actually having to use the user interface to do that. One of the things that I'd really recommend if you plan to do something like that is, again, look at using WB Scan. WB Scan is a shop floor based system for real-time scanning of your pallets. One of the things it can do is when you have finished your pallet and have wrapped it and stuck your placard on it, you could scan it as being ready. And if we did that, then we would only be displaying ready pallets, meaning that these are available for shipping. Otherwise, you're looking at pallets that are sitting in mail.dat but haven't necessarily been produced yet. Right, so that's one of the things that would help drive an automated process like the one I just described of matching new pallets to existing manifests that haven't gone out yet. Another thing that you can do is if you plan a manifest ahead of time, you can scan the barcodes on the pallet placards as you're loading the trailer. And if the pallet placard belongs to something that shouldn't be on that truck, you're going to get a warning. And if you're using a handheld device and you see the warning in your hand, you'll be able to, make sure that pallet doesn't go on that trailer. It also gives you like a pallet countdown so that, if you're supposed to load 20 pallets and you only made it to 19, then it knows it's telling you that there's one that's missing and you can figure out what it is and go find it and put it on the truck. So it's going to really help avoid misships and things like that. And yeah, you'll have the ability of, creating manifests on the fly with WB Scan, even for a multi-stop direct trailer or carriers other than LSC, although all those features may not be in next week's release, but they're coming. And the other thing that we'll be adding in the next 6 to 8 weeks is essentially text message notifications. I know some of you are using, stationary computers with Wi-Fi, actually mostly Bluetooth remote scanners. So you wouldn't see the warning if you scanned a pallet onto the trailer, and you wouldn't be able to see it. So what this will allow you to do is use one of those, cheap wireless scanners, connected to your computer, and the warning will be text message to you, so that if you have like an iPhone or whatever sitting in your pocket and you feel it vibrate, you pull it out and there's your error, your warning, don't load this pallet, it doesn't belong here, whatever it is. So that's something we're also adding to help broaden the types of devices that you can use a WB Scan. At any rate, the two go together, like bread and butter, peanut butter and jelly, whatever you want to call it. So the other items on the menu, again, we can go right to the manifest menu for doing a dispatch. We have some reports in export. We have something called a pre-production report. Those of you that have used DynaMail or DynaMail Web, I've seen that report. We have another way of getting to our trailer export from there. For those of you using LSC, there's a dismiss release program. It's actually very similar to what you just saw, but the mail clerk can use it to drill down. They have a simplified drill down screen for looking at what's been paid and what's been dealt with. And then this is your DIME legacy. This takes you through that serial process of associating content, picking pallets, associating with the trailer, but one job at a time. But as I mentioned, it's not fully compatible with all the other functions that have been added to the program, which is why we would like to replace it. And we would like all of you still using this to try this one instead. Give it a little time, give us your feedback. But we do have some people using it, and it seems to be working pretty well. And with this, you'll also have the flexibility now of creating loads for other carriers. So with that, I am going to open the floor to questions.
Okay, thanks, Lloyd. So I think we already talked about some of the future roadmap. I just want to go through these real quick before we get to the questions. We're adding support for additional logistics carriers, as you've seen, and the multi-job trailer planning. And of course, as we have conversations with additional logistics carriers, that'll move from the hard copy generation of those things to electronic communication of data. And of course, as you've also seen, we've improved support for direct trailers and LTL shipments and commingled mail, and those will continue. And Lloyd also mentioned WB Scan, and we're also adding some improvements to that. So if you haven't taken a look at that, we encourage you to do that because it will make a lot of this a lot easier. Anything to add there before we go into questions, Lloyd?
Yeah, actually, I did find a haptic wristband. It's kind of like an Apple Watch that will vibrate and show a message. We're looking at that as another possible way of doing warning messages. I still prefer the shock collar, but I don't think OSHA would go for that. And I don't think any of you guys would probably want to wear it either. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have added a considerable number of features to WB Scan recently for doing QA, and we now have a methodology of spotting the most common source of undocumented pieces. When you have like you rerun the pre-sort and you start printing off the first pre-sort, but start doing your edocs off the second, WB Scan can detect that and warn you before you do your edocs so that you can send up the right file and avoid the undocumented pieces. So, WB Scan is kind of turning into like a Swiss Army knife, doing lots of different things. The fact that it's so versatile actually makes it kind of hard to sell and hard to, it's kind of easier to look at it one thing at a time. Oh, it's going to verify my trailers or help me do trailer loading. That's one thing. Oh, it's going to help me keep an eye on, what state the production status of the production is for each job. That's another thing. Oh, it's going to help me QA my jobs. Oh, that's another thing. It actually is a very powerful product, and if you haven't looked at it, it would be something worth looking at. And we're going to be adding support for first-class CSA pallets. We've actually had people who want to do trailer management of first-class pallet trailer loading. Again, we'll be able to think of it this way. A CSA separation is kind of like a USPS entry point standard. Mm-hmm. And so some of the same problems can happen if you load the wrong pallet onto the wrong trailer.
Sure.
So again, that we are supposed to have out by June or in June. And the other thing we're looking at is support for logical, or I should say sibling pallets for logical jobs, commingled jobs. The issue there is you don't know how much the pallet weighs. So, but we actually have figured out a neat way to do it. And, that will be something we'll be supporting probably by the end of the summer. And that's something that we will be doing then.
Great.
Okay.
Yep, it is a great product, a lot of versatility. So just to remind you, there's a lot of changes. We've gone through a lot of things today, and we're not going to leave you just hanging there without any help. We are here to help you go through all these changes and manage all these changes. We'll have this video of this webinar that we'll make available to all the attendees, and we'll be providing some additional instructions to you separately. But if you have any questions, or if you want to take a look at WB Scan and all the things that it has to offer, please do contact us. You can call us on our 800 number at 800-524-0380, or you can send us an email to sales@windowbook.com. So now we'd like to open it up for questions. We're sure there are some questions. In fact, I've seen some come in already. So just a quick reminder how to do that. You can either click on the raise hand icon, and then we'll unmute you so you can ask your question. Or you can type your question into the questions area and click on the send button, and then we'll read and respond to your question. So if you haven't already submitted your question, go ahead and do that, and I will go take a look and see what we've got out here, because we do have some questions already that have been submitted. Okay, and you may have already covered these, Lloyd, but they may just want a little bit of refresher. So how do I set up the new user interface, and how does the new format allow for direct trucks?
Okay. Well, I want to throw the screen back over me.
Okay.
Okay, so again, if you go to our settings, if you don't get cross-eyed first, you'll see that we have a logistics tab here. And, so the step one is to create a carrier for LSC and then select it. This activates DIME, all right, this top line, all right. LSC has a second program called One Price, which is different, has different workflow. You could use the same code or you could use a different one, but that workflow gets activated if you select, carrier for this one. And as we add additional carrier interfaces, you're going to see this list grow. Like when we have ALG, there'll be ALG carrier, you select that one. That way we know that when you select that particular carrier, we're going to activate the ALG interface. So that's basically how the setup works initially. And one of the things is that under the old DIME menu, we had DIME settings. This is more of a generic maintenance versus just oops, I hit the wrong one, versus WB Scan maintenance. But WB Scan is in there as well. So this is where you get to the settings that you'll have to change your URL. You don't have to change anything else. We're just going to have to copy and paste the links that we give you into these fields and then hit OK, and that will take care of switching you to the new servers. And as far as actually creating a direct trailer, I know I just jump. I can just jump directly to manifests, or I could go into the pallet list. But the idea here is that when I create a manifest, I would select a trailer, a carrier other than LSC. I can't do direct trailers yet for LSC. And when we do direct trailers for LSC, it's only going to allow us to do one stop. Just so you know, that's a limitation. But if I were to go ahead and tell us that it's a direct trailer. By the way, there's also origin trailers for your origin mail. There's LTL trailers, which have a somewhat different characteristic. It's very similar to a consolidation trailer in that we can take pallets from any entry point. difference is that we don't really care where they're going when it comes to like a consolidation center. Commingle is something that we need to do some work on to help you identify mail that you want to send out to commingle, but many of you may use a outside commingling company, and you want to perhaps manage the transportation of mail to that commingling company, so there'll be commingled trailers as well. And then of course, the question was on direct trailers. So once you select direct trailer, then you simply add your entry points from the entry list. And as I said, you can rearrange the order, after you've done the selection. So it's really that simple. And the really neat thing about it is that when you select the trailer, when you're in the pallet list, the only pallets that remain on the list will be the ones that could go on that trailer. The ones going to other entry points disappear.
Nice.
So it's a very, very elegant way to make it easy. Next question.
All right. Thank you, Lloyd. I'm going to leave it with you because you might need to show something here. Can you filter on the scheduled dispatch date from the browse palette?
Yes, I believe we can. Actually, we're adding some more filter conditions. We're doing entry point for, this is particularly useful for, direct pallets. Of course, if you create a trailer, it already will do that. But the other one we're adding is also CSA separation for the first class. But, oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so I think part of it is that mail date and ship date are, well, actually in DAT-MAIL, they are different. The payment date is the postage statement mailing date in CSM, which is when you generate postage statements, what's going to be used on the date. Mail date is something that we have been using a field in CSM that no one ever uses. It's actual ship date. And, there's no way to really know that. Nobody's going to bother putting that in. But I think what you're talking about is scheduled ship date, which you now see on the pallet browse. And you know what? I don't have a filter for that, and that is a heck of a good suggestion. So when we add our other filters, I'll make sure to get that in there. So scheduled ship date filter. Thank you.
Yes.
I thought I had it, but this is not the same thing. This is a estimated mailing date that you can put in when you first import a file.
All right, let me check and see if we've got any raised hands. That is a great suggestion. And, as people look at this stuff and start working with it, we do encourage you to let us know if you run into issues or if you run into things that would make things easier for you. We want to hear about that as well, because we're always open to suggestions for improvement. Okay, it looks like that is all the questions that we have. Let me just switch back over here. And again, we just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedules today. We know this is a lot of information, and we know you're going to have a short time period, unfortunately, to make these changes. We wish we could build more time in there, and we are trying to get a little extension from LSC, but we will do the best we can to work with you. And again, the release is targeted for April 25th, and I think, Lloyd, you said those changes, they have like a day to get those in place, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, if they don't extend us, sometime over the weekend, they'll shut down the redirects that they have on the old servers, and that will be it. So the phones will be lighting up on Monday. I suspect that will happen anyway, but hopefully people will, be able to at least work over the weekend to make the change. It's not going to take too much time. The legacy interface, actually, all you're going to need to do is change those links But to start using or continue using the newer user interface, you will have to create that carrier record and assign it, associate it with that LSC and the settings.
Okay. Well, we do encourage you again to call us if you've got any questions or need any help with this. And certainly if you want to take a look at WB Scan that works hand in hand with this, or as Lloyd says, bread and butter or peanut butter and jelly, please do give us a call at 800-524-0380 or send us an email to sales@windowbook.com. Thanks again, Lloyd, for all this helpful information, and thanks everybody for participating today. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.